So Churchill's stubbornness, Churchill is Prime Minister of Britain, refusing to do the smart thing and compromise with Hitler. And Sir Hugh Dowding's cleverness in terms of setting up the radar system of ground control for British Fighter Command and the people who build the Spitfires and Hurricanes and who fly them save Britain and cause the cancellation of Operation Sea Lion. Part of this success is actually due to Hermann Goering and Adolf Hitler, who changed the target of the German attacks from the British radar bases and fighter command to the blitzing of the city of London, something they continue for the next couple of years. And then at the end of the war, not with bombers, but with missiles. They just are fixated on destroying London with bombs. So the London Blitz is going to basically go in heavy or light forms from September of 1940 until the very ending of the war. But Hitler never wanted to fight the British. The British annoy him. They're stubborn, but they're small. They're such a small little island. Look, they're off the coast of Europe. Hitler begins convincing himself of something that he always said was folly. In Mein Kampf, he wrote about it as folly. Fighting a war on two fronts is the doom of Germany. Germany wins when it fights on one front, the Franco-Prussian War. France is beaten. End of story. World War I, Germany versus France and Russia. Germany loses. End of story. So far, because of his pact with Stalin, Hitler has prevented a fight with the Soviet Union. But he wants the fight with the Soviet Union. In his book, Mein Kampf, Hitler talks about gaining Lebensraum. Lebensraum is living space. And what he pictures is the Slavs of the Ukraine, of White Russia, of Great Russia, of Poland, and of the Baltic states turned into slaves, like the blacks in the old American South, working the land for their German masters. And that Germany will expand to include territory as far maybe as the Caucasus Mountains and the Caspian Sea, which is off this map. Lebensraum is one reason why he wants to go after Russia. Natural resources is another. The Russians have massive reserves of minerals that are useful in war and peace, and Hitler wants control of them. Finally, though, at this time, the majority of the world's Jews are located between Berlin and Moscow. Between Berlin and Moscow, there is Poland and the area of the old Russian Empire that was known as the Jewish Pale. This is where Fiddler on the Roof took place in the little village of Anatemkin. Well, that Jewish Pale contains the vast majority of Earth's Jews. And Hitler is not joking in his anti-Semitism. He sees the Jews as a cancer on the human race, and it's his job and his duty and his glory to cut it out. So as 1940 becomes 1941, Hitler's interest in Britain wanes, and his interest in going after Soviet Russia waxes. He becomes convinced that now is the time to go after the Russians in the campaigning season of the spring of 1941. But there are distractions. One distraction is Benito Mussolini. Mussolini is in North Africa. Libya is controlled by the Italians. And he tries conquering the British in Egypt to take the Suez Canal and to make Egypt Italian like it was under Caesar. But the British, under a series of generals, outfight the Italians pretty mightily. Mussolini asks Hitler for help. And Hitler takes a small tank corps and places it under one of his most aggressive tank commanders, Erwin Rommel, and sends it to North Africa to lead the war effort against the British. Rommel, who's later known to history as the Desert Fox, is a Nazi. He is somebody who is, like Hitler, not from the upper class. He is a self-made man. Um, he's not a dyed-in-the-wool, completely ardent Nazi, but he's friendly to Nazism in a way that few Western historians are comfortable talking about. But in North Africa, Rommel becomes known as the Desert Fox, as a man who is incredibly good at this weird desert kind of tank warfare. The British end up respecting the heck out of him because he seems to have chivalry like a knight. He fights without playing dirty. He fights well. He's a worthy opponent. And he defeats the British as much or more than he loses to them. Really, the question in North Africa is who has the most supplies. Can the British send enough supplies around Africa to arrive in Egypt before the Germans can send supplies through Italy and across the Mediterranean Sea to Libya and to French Tunisia? The British have Malta, an island off the south coast of Sicily, and they have aircraft and shooting down these supply planes, and they have submarines throughout the Mediterranean sinking the ships. And the Germans, of course, have submarines out in the ocean. So it's a war of not only generals and tanks, it's a war of supplies, getting the right amount of supplies to the Africa Corps and the Italians in Libya, or to the British in Egypt. Now, what's on the line? It's not just Suez. It's not just Suez. The Palestinian people, the Arabs that live in Jordan and Palestine, hate the Jews. And they now hate the British largely because they brought the Jews. If the British lose Egypt, Haj Amin al-Husseini, who personally visits Hitler several times during the war, who personally raises an SS division from Bosnian Muslims, Haj Amin al-Husseini, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, the leader of the Islamic faith for the Palestinian people, is an active ally of Hitler, because both he and Hitler want to do the same thing to the Jews. So, if Rommel reaches the Suez Canal, Palestine and the rest of the Arab world will rise in support of Hitler's Germany. It'll be Lawrence of Arabia in reverse. And the oil of the Middle East will be lost to Britain. So there's a lot riding on this. And both sides are going to be duking it out in North Africa. And that's a distraction for Hitler. He wants to leave the British alone. He wants to go after Russia. But he's got to keep sending supplies to North Africa because Rommel says there's going to be really good things if we beat the British in Egypt. And then, as Hitler's forces are massing eastward and leaving relatively light forces to defend against the British, in Yugoslavia, there is a change in government. There's actually an overthrow of a fairly pro-German government, and a popular government is elected that is very anti-Nazi. The Germans need to do something about this. So Hitler orders the forces that he had massing eastward to go south, and quickly during the spring, early and mid-spring, he invades Yugoslavia. Now, the Italians are in Albania. They try to help, but they're sort of pathetic. And the Greeks get involved supporting the Yugoslavs, and the British get involved supporting the Greeks. So the Germans march into Yugoslavia. Their allies in Hungary and Romania also march south. And basically, the Balkan Peninsula is going to be taken by the Germans. In Greece, the British try to put up a fight, but they are humiliated and kicked off the coast, kicked off the shores of Greece, and the British try to hold out on the island of Crete. The Germans then do what they did in Norway, but even more so. The Germans take their entire airborne army of parachute troops and land them at every key point on Crete simultaneously. Within a week or two, the British are defeated on Crete, even though they have massively more troops, and they have a powerful naval force surrounding the island. The Germans managed to take their paratroops and have them conquer airfields, and they just ship in troops after troops after troops by air. So the Germans, in about 2 months, take the entire Balkan region. They now control all of Europe except for Spain, Portugal, Sweden, all of Europe, and Switzerland, which is neutral. Everything between Spain and Russia is theirs. The only people that are flies in their ointment are the British, and Hitler sees the British as effectively impotent. But we're going to find that the excursion, 6 to 8 weeks going down into the Balkans, is going to truly change the history of the world, as Hitler contemplates delaying and has to delay the invasion of Russia in order to accomplish it.